Hey there, and welcome back into another episode of the Route 1 Rundown. I'm your host, Steve Corgi, and I'm thrilled to be back for another episode to talk some Terps. But before I dive into Maryland's first round NCAA Tournament matchup with the Grand Canyon Antelopes, just a reminder that this show is on YouTube and part of the Department of Hoops, a DMV media network. So if you're into local basketball, then you're going to love the Department of Hoops because we're covering everything there. From the Wizards to the Terps to mid-major basketball, we've got you covered. So make sure you go to youtube.com/@Department of Hoops. You can subscribe to this show. You can check out all of the other great shows. Just make sure that when you watch something, if you like it, you subscribe, you like, and most importantly, share it with a friend who also loves the Terps, who also loves local hoops. That is the single best thing you can do to help us out. But without further ado, it's time. It's tournament time. So let's dive in to Maryland's first round NCAA tournament matchup with Grand Canyon. Maryland, of course, the number 4 seed out in the West region. Grand Canyon, the number 13 seed, the WAC champion. They finished second in the regular season. They went and they beat Utah Valley in the WAC championship game to earn that automatic bid. They are led by Bryce Drew, who I forgot was the head coach at Valparaiso when Maryland played Valpo in the first round in 2015. Maryland won that game 65-62, but you might remember it as the Varun Ram game. Varun Ram comes in the game. Valpo is trying to tie the game. He gets a strip in the closing seconds. Maybe it was a foul. Wasn't called a foul. Maryland ends up getting the win, but I had completely forgotten about that moment and the fact that Bryce Drew was the coach of Valpo at the time. Maryland now faces his new team, Grand Canyon, this season, and Grand Canyon is a team that is in the NCAA tournament for the third year in a row. Last year, they took down St. Mary's as a 12 seed before falling to Alabama in the second round. They are looking to pull an upset for the second year in a row. So what I want to do today is I really want to dive deep into this game. Yesterday, I gave my initial reactions on Selection Sunday, kind of talk big picture, surface level about Grand Canyon. I want to go deeper into this game, and it's a game that's going to tip off at 4:35 Eastern time on Friday afternoon. Maryland still an 11.5-point favorite per the Vegas odds maker. So what do you need to know about Grand Canyon? Well, Grand Canyon, they're not your typical mid-major. Typically, when you think mid-major, you think undersized team that shoots the ball really well and can get hot from beyond the arc. That's not Grand Canyon at all. They're 311th nationally in three-point rate, and they have just one player in their starting lineup, Colin Moore, who's shooting over 35% from beyond the arc. That is not their game. But what they are is they're big. They have size, they have length, they have athleticism, especially for the mid-major level, especially for the MAC. So they're a little bit of an inverse of what you think of when you think of a mid-major. Typically, you think great three-point shooting team, undersized. Well, Grand Canyon's the opposite. They are not a great three-point shooting team, but they have a lot of size. In fact, they don't have a single player in their starting lineup under 6'4". Their guards, they start 2 guards that are 6'4". That's bigger than what Maryland starts. They're going to have a size advantage on Jacoby Gillespie there. This is a big, strong, athletic team, especially for that level of the sport. I had a chance to go back and watch Grand Canyon's WAC championship game victory against Utah Valley. Utah Valley was the team that won the league in the regular season. They were the 1 and 2 teams. It was a really good battle, a really good game. But my main takeaway from that game is Grand Canyon is a team that's all about attacking. They attack on both the offensive and defensive ends of the floor. On defense, let's start there, because defense is really what this team is known for. When you look at their analytical profile on KenPom, they're number 67 nationally in adjusted defensive efficiency compared to 149th on offense. So they are a defensively driven basketball team. They're 26th in the country at defensive effective field goal percentage. They're 30th nationally in defensive turnover percentage. They're 25th nationally in 2-point field goal percentage, and they are 35th nationally in defensive block percentage. This is a team that is going to come after you, that's going to be aggressive. And they didn't in that WAC championship game. They didn't do a lot of the full court pressure in that game. You think of a team typically that's high tempo, they're 14th nationally in tempo, that's really good defensively, that forces turnovers. You kind of assume this is a team that's going to press. Well, they're very aggressive, but it wasn't with a lot of full court press. Once you get into the half court is when the aggression really begins. And that was the main thing I took away from watching them. And I think that size and that length and athleticism that they have really is one of the reasons that they're able to do it. 2 guards in their starting lineup at 6'4", in Ray Harrison, their point guard, and Colin Moore, their off guard. Then you have at the 3 spot, probably their best player, Tyon Grant Foster. He's a 6'7" wing. He was first team all WAC in 2024. He was the WAC player of the year, and he really has a great story, an interesting story. In 2021, while he was playing at DePaul, he collapsed at halftime of an early season game. He had to undergo multiple heart surgeries before he was cleared to play a couple years later. Really scary stuff, but he is back and playing really good basketball. One of the key reasons that Grand Canyon was able to pull that upset against St. Mary's in the first round last year. But he is a guy who is long and athletic. At the 4 spot, they have Jacoby Coles at 6'8", who's a 4-man that started his career at Butler, then transferred to TCU. He has some length at 6'8", but it's really Tyon Grant Foster who stands out when you watch this team at 6'7", super athletic, super long, and a guy that they really rely on both the offensive and defensive end. So defensively, they are aggressive once they get into half court. They're pretty switchable given the size on this team, but everything is hard. Everything is aggressive. They don't let you get to the basket easily. They are really right on you out on that 3-point line. They don't let you get a lot of open threes very easily. In fact, when you look at their profile, one of the best teams in the country at 3-point field goal percentage defense, holding opponents to just over 32% from beyond the arc this season. It's because they are so aggressive. They get right out on you. They don't give you a lot of time. They don't give you a lot of space. They make you make decisions very quickly, and you better make the right decision or else that ball's going the other way. So that really is what stood out to me from them on the defensive end. And then on the offensive side of things, it's really a lot of the same thing. It's very aggressive. It's put your head down and get downhill. Now, they are not a great 3-point shooting team, but they have a lot of guys who want to get to the basket and are creative finishers. That was something I really noticed, is that they have all these guys trying to get downhill, but also are very effective finishers at the rim. At times, it felt like maybe they relied on their athleticism a little too much in that WAC championship game. It felt like the ball can get a little sticky. It can get a little one-on-one, whether that's Harrison going one-on-one, whether that's Grant Foster going one-on-one. It seems like at times there's a lot of guys standing around and one guy just trying to get downhill, but it certainly works for them at that level where they are so much more athletic than a lot of their opponents. They had 6 guys in double figures in that WAC title game against Utah Valley. And as a team, they just get to the line. In that championship game, Tyon Grant Foster gets to the line 8 times, goes 6 of 8 from the line. Ray Harrison gets to the line 6 times. Jacoby Coles gets to the line 4 times. They shot 33 free throws in that game, and they went 27 of 33. That's something that they are going to try to do. It's a concerted effort on their end. They are going to attack. They are going to get downhill, and they are going to. They don't mind taking the contact again because they are a physical, athletic team. They have some creative finishers that can finish through contact, and they're 7th in the country at free throw rate. And it's not just one guy. It's not just, you look back at, use Maryland, for example, in the Melo Trimble years. Melo Trimble was great at getting to the free throw line. It's not just one guy for them. It's Tyon Grant-Foster. He can do it. Ray Harrison can do it. Their center, Duke Brennan, gets to the line a lot. Off the bench, Mekhi Williams does it. He's in the top 100 in the country in free throw rate. It's a concerted team mindset. They are going to put their head down and they are going to absorb the contact. A lot of these guys can finish through contact and they don't mind getting to the free throw line, where they shoot just over 73% as a team on the season. That is their mindset. They want to get downhill. They want to get to the basket. They want to get to the line. That's how they want to beat you. They don't want to get necessarily into a three-point shooting contest. So as far as guys to know on this Grand Canyon team, I've mentioned several of them. Tyon Grant-Foster, first team all-WAC. Jacoby Coles, first team all-WAC. That's their 3 and 4 guys there. Those are their 2 leading scorers, both averaging just over 14 points per game, and both have pedigrees, right? They both have played at a high major level. Jacoby Coles spent time at Butler and TCU. Tyon Grant-Foster was at DePaul, but even before that, he had spent some time at Kansas. These guys have played at the highest level of the sport. So again, it feels like for the WAC level, they have a different level of athleticism. They have a different level of length. And really the stats bear that out too when you talk about their length and how big they are and how long they are. They're 52nd in the country in average height. So this is a big physical basketball team. One guy I haven't mentioned a whole lot is their big man inside, 6'10 junior center, Duke Brennan. What he does really well is he rebounds the basketball. He's 28th nationally in offensive rebounding percentage. And then another guy to really keep your eye on is kind of an X factor, and he stood out to me in watching that WAC title game, is Locke Wurr. He's a senior. He started his career at Oregon, and he is a guy who's 6'9", but he can step out and he can hit the three, shooting about 35.5% from beyond the arc on the season. He's taken 93 threes this year, and in that game against Utah Valley, he made a couple of them that were really big at critical moments in that game. Wurr in that game goes for 12 points. He was 3 of 5 from beyond the arc. He was the 6th man of the year in the conference. So he's a guy to watch coming off the bench for them when Jacoby Coles was a guy who got into foul trouble for them in that WAC title game. If he has to come in, if Locke Wurr has to come in, he's a guy that can be a threat. He's not a guy that you should necessarily take lightly if Grand Canyon does get into foul trouble and they have to go to their bench. So what are the keys to this game after looking at this Grand Canyon team, after watching them play? My first question is, I think the most important question is, how does Maryland deal with this attacking aggressive style on both the offensive and defensive ends? I think when Maryland is on defense, the key is keeping them out of the lane and making them shoot mid-range jumpers, making them shoot contested three-pointers. Maryland really good at switching defenses. We've seen that matchup zone a lot this year. Maybe the matchup zone is something that we see Maryland utilize. They are, one of the things that I think Maryland's been great at is the bigs deflecting passes while in that zone. I've talked a lot about Julian Reese's hands and deflections and whether he should have been on that first team or on that Big Ten all defensive team. I think that's something that could be really effective for Maryland because, like I said, at times I felt like this Grand Canyon team relied a little too much on one-on-one. And if you have teams if you have Grand Canyon driving into a clogged lane and looking for a pass, having to look for a pass because there's just nothing there, I think that presents a really good opportunity to get some of those deflections and send the ball back the other way, where Maryland can get out and transition and get some easy transition points. So I'll be interested to see, does Maryland go to that matchup zone at all? Turnovers have also been a weakness for Grand Canyon this season. They are not a great team at taking care of the basketball. They were really good against Utah Valley. It didn't seem to be a problem, but on the season, they are 271st in the country in offensive turnover percentage. There have been times throughout the season where they really struggle with taking care of the basketball. Earlier in February in a game against Cal Baptist, they had a 28% turnover rate. The game after that against Tarleton, they won the game. It was a close game, but they had a 32.7% turnover rate. If Maryland can force a lot of turnovers, if Maryland can get out in transition, I think that would be a long day for Grand Canyon. And then from an offensive perspective for Maryland, how do they deal with an aggressive attacking defense? Do they use that to their advantage? Are they composed? Do they use it to find easy buckets, or are they flustered by that attacking defense? Do they take shots maybe a little sooner than they would like to? Because, sometimes when you're dealing with a defense like that, as soon as you see a little bit of daylight, you put up a shot that's maybe not the best shot. How does Maryland deal with that? I think this is a really big opportunity for a guy like Rodney Rice that Grand Canyon has to respect out on the perimeter. And we've seen Rice do more and more of this over the course of the season, where he's putting up that shot fake and he's getting in the lane. He's either getting to the basket or he's hitting a mid-range shot. He's really has a really nice mid-range game. I've also seen him have some nice passes once he's able to get into that lane to the bigs. I think it opens up a lot, and I think Rodney Rice and Selton Miguel are going to be kind of guys that are X factors, because you do have to respect their ability to shoot from the outside. So what do they do when you have Grand Canyon really aggressively getting out on those guys at the three-point line? Do they put up that shot fake and get an easier look? Can they get it in to Julian Reese and Derek Queen once they get into the lane? And can they hit some of those mid-range jumpers? I think those two guys are huge X factors in this game when you think about how aggressive this Grand Canyon defense is out on the perimeter and how much length they do have. I don't think the answer all the time is going to be just putting up a contested three, even though we've seen those guys make really tough shots from time to time. This is a team that it's going to be hard to shoot against like that because of their aggressiveness, because of their length. So can you make them pay for that aggressiveness? And then I think along those same lines, when you think about the aggressiveness of this team, is can Maryland stay out of foul trouble? Because so much has been made about the lack of depth on this team, about how much this is a team that really only goes truly like 7 deep. And if Maryland does get into foul trouble against a team that is very aggressive, that attacks, that could spell trouble. That would be one way for Maryland to get upset in this game, is if Maryland gets into foul trouble and can't play their best players and really has to rely on a bench that is just not quite at the same level as that starting five. When you match up Maryland's starting five, they can match up against almost anybody in the country. But when you start going 7, 8 deep, that's where things get a little bit more iffy. That's something I'm watching. Maryland's really going to have to play with a lot of composure on the defensive end and offensive end as well to make sure they don't get themselves into foul trouble in what could be a very physical, up and down kind of ball game. Now, the next question I have is, how do Julian Reese and Derek Queen and really this whole team respond to being out-rebounded so significantly by Michigan? Because I mentioned Duke Brennan of Grand Canyon, their big man, who started his career at Arizona State. He is a very good offensive rebounding big man. This team, Grand Canyon, they are in the top 100 nationally in offensive rebounding percentage. How does Maryland respond? Because to me, that is absolutely where the Michigan game was lost in the Big Ten tournament semifinals. Michigan dominated Maryland on the glass, and that is what cost them the game. Does Maryland respond and really make a concerted effort to keep Brennan off the glass, to keep him at bay, to contain him, to make sure they don't get any second chance opportunities? Because look, Maryland can just outmath them in this game, to be quite honest. If Maryland wins the turnover battle, if Maryland is even or better on the offensive glass, and Grand Canyon is shooting twos while Maryland is making threes, we know Maryland a really good three-point shooting team, it's going to be really hard just math-wise if you're down in possessions and you're down in shot attempts and you're trading twos for threes. It's going to be hard for Grand Canyon to win that game. So that's something I'm really looking for. How does the team, but particularly the bigs, Queen, Reese, Geronimo, how do they respond to being beaten up physically on the glass by Michigan by Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden in the Big Ten tournament semifinals? How do they respond going into this Grand Canyon game against a team that is a good offensive rebounding team against a big in Duke Brennan, who's a very good offensive rebounding big? I also want to see with those two guys, like they are what drive Maryland, right? Derek Queen, first team all Big Ten. We've talked at length about what a rock Julian Reese is for this program and what he brings to the table on both the offensive and defensive end. Earlier in the year, Georgia played Grand Canyon. It was a game in Atlanta. Georgia got the victory 73-68. Georgia, a good team, a tournament team. Their two freshman bigs, both guys 6'11", Asa Newell and Samto Cyril, combined for 29 points in that game, 9 of 10 from inside the arc. Georgia as a team was 19 of 30 at the rim in that game. Can Maryland replicate that? So I think a lot here is going to be relying on Derek Queen and Julian Reese. When you get to tournament time, you need your best players to be your best players. And I think Maryland needs Julian Reese and Derek Queen to play the way we know they're capable of based on how Grand Canyon handled some pretty talented freshman bigs in Asa Newell and Samto Cyril from Georgia earlier this season. I think Julian Reese and Derek Queen can have a big day against this Grand Canyon front line. And then the last thing I'm looking for here, and I mentioned it a little bit already, is but can Maryland make this into a three-point shootout? Because that is a strength of the Terps. Maryland is a very good three-point shooting team, as we know. We know how Rodney Rice, Jacoby Gillespie, Selton Miguel can shoot the basketball. Grand Canyon doesn't have that. And a real easy way to run a team out of the gym is to start trading twos for threes. I also like this from the perspective of if Grand Canyon is shooting a lot of threes, they're not attacking, and you're getting them out of rhythm, getting them out of your game. So I don't believe by any means that the key for Maryland here is that they should just jack up a bunch of threes. But I think if Maryland is getting good, high-quality looks from beyond the arc, and they're hitting at the rate that we've seen them hit at, if they're making the plays we've seen them play at, they're shooting at the level we know they can shoot out, I think that would be a very good recipe for Maryland if Maryland is able to get some high quality looks from three, that they're able to make those threes, and they're also able to put a little game pressure on Grand Canyon to maybe get away from that attacking style and make them shoot the three, make them shoot the deep ball, which is not necessarily their game. I'll leave you with a final prediction here. I don't do predictions a lot, but it's tournament time, so let's do a prediction. I think Maryland wins this game. I think Maryland advances. I mentioned Maryland's an 11.5-point favorite per Vegas in this game. Maryland's a 14-point favorite per KenPom. I think this is a good matchup for Maryland. I would much rather face a team like Grand Canyon, if I'm Maryland, than a team like maybe Yale, perhaps. Yale is kind of that classic mid-major. That's a great three-point shooting team that can get hot on any given day. When I watch Grand Canyon, I'm impressed by them. I'm impressed by what they bring to the table, but it feels like they rely a lot on the fact that they're more athletic than a lot of the teams that they play in their conference. I think Maryland can certainly match them athleticism-wise, and I think Maryland has the advantage when it comes to ball handling. I think Maryland has the advantage when it comes to three-point shooting, and I think Maryland has the advantage when it comes to the big. So I think if this is an up-and-down ball game, as long as Maryland can stay out of foul trouble, I think Maryland wins this game. Not to say that there's not a recipe for an upset here. I think there absolutely is, and I think it really starts with Maryland getting into foul trouble. But based on everything I've seen from this team this year, based on the style of play Grand Canyon plays, based on the teams that have given Maryland trouble, I like this matchup for the Terps, and I see them advancing to a second-round matchup with either Colorado State or Memphis. That's the show for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. There will be much more as the tournament continues, so stay tuned right here. Until next time, this has been the Route 1 Rundown.